an English whiskey, Cask Strength. Let's check it out. What's happening, guys? Welcome back to the Whiskey Shed. My name is John McGrath, an Irishman in his workshop, tasting whiskey and sharing that journey with you guys. Now, we have a English whiskey for you today, which is a bit unusual because England is not known for its whiskies, but we'll get into that now in a minute. This is a Cask Strength. It is Cotswolds Founder's Choice Single Malt, and this was a gift sent to me by Matthew from Workshop Heaven. So if you guys don't know, I have another YouTube channel which is kind of like my main channel. It's all woodworking and making related, and I got lots of tools. I buy lots of tools from Workshop Heaven, and it is correctly named Workshop Heaven because if you're into your hand tool woodworking, then Workshop Heaven is absolutely the place to go. It is heaven when you're looking around that website. It's got some fantastic tools. And I arrived home the other day. Matthew is also into his whiskey by all accounts, and he enjoys the Whiskey Shed videos as well. So this was waiting for me. He wanted me to try it out. So thanks very much, Matthew. What a lovely surprise indeed. And I'm quite happy to try this one out. And like I say, it's an English whiskey, and England is not known for its whiskey. So without further ado, let's get in and give you a little bit about the bottle, a little bit about the distillery, and then we'll get in and nose and taste it. Okay, so a little bit about the whiskey and the distillery and a little bit of history and a few stories like we always do. Now, I didn't have too much reading up to do on this one. As you can see, it's established in 2014 on the bottle, not 1608, so I didn't have to spend hours reading up on history to give you guys some of the context and some of the stories. But this one was founded by an American by the name of Daniel Zohr. He made his money on Wall Street, I believe, from what I understand. He kind of got tired of doing that, and he moved to the Cotswolds in England, which is where this bottle of whiskey gets its name. Now, the Cotswolds is a region in England. It's about 800 square miles. It's an absolutely beautiful, picturesque, if you imagine rolling green hills and quaint little villages, rural life, that's what the Cotswolds is. It's a place where people go on holidays. Look it up, it's absolutely beautiful and picturesque. All the little stone houses and villages there are absolutely fantastic, and that's where this whiskey is, and it's the first whiskey, I believe, to be produced in that region. Now, the region takes in about 5 counties, so it's all the shire, so it's Warwickshire, Gloucestershire, Oxfordshire, all those places, and it's just to the right of Bristol, just east of Wales, roughly, if you can imagine that area there. You won't be too far wrong, you'll be in the right area. And like I say, it's an absolutely beautiful place. Now, Daniel did the right thing. He brought in some experts when he set up his distillery. So he brought in Harry Cockburn he was formerly of the Bowmore Distillery in Islay. He was the master distiller there. And he also brought in Dr. Jim Swan, who was an expert in cask maturation. And it's the STR type casks. I'll get into that now when we're reviewing the whiskey, we're nose and tasting it, that's using this. And these bottles are actually dedicated to Dr. Jim Swan because he has since passed away, sadly. But yeah, that's a little bit about the whiskey. Now, it's quite interesting because England, like I said, is not known for its whiskey, although back in the early 20th century, so in around 1900, England was producing a good bit of whiskey too. It wasn't nearly on the levels of what Ireland and Scotland were doing, but a lot of the whiskey that England was producing was actually getting sent to Ireland to be blended here in Ireland. And again, the whiskey industry just shut down in England, and the first single malt wasn't distilled again until around 2005, so they're literally back on the scene. There's now 28 distilleries, I believe, up and running in England, so it's going to be interesting to see the whiskies that come out of England in the next few years. Just like all the new distilleries popping up in Ireland, we are spoiled for choice now. So that's just a little bit about the whiskey itself. There's not too much history with this one, but let's get in and do some nosing and tasting. Okay, let's get it in the glass and let's listen for the cork pop. Everybody seems to enjoy that, so there we go. It's a nice one. Okay, so let's get nosing and tasting this. Now let me give you a little bit about this whiskey. So it's an English single malt. Now all the barley that goes into this is from the Cotswolds region, and that's great to see because terroir is starting to become a big thing in whiskey. And if you've been following Waterford whiskey, which is where I am, the distillery is literally 5 minutes in that direction. They've took a big bet that terroir makes a difference. So the land, the region, the area where the barley comes from they're making the bet that if you grow the same strain of barley in different regions, that you will be able to taste that in the whiskey, even though it's distilled and matured the exact same way, that the land, the climate, everything makes a difference. So it's great to see that locally grown barley goes into this, and they've said that they were only going to use barley from the Cotswolds, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Now, it's aged in ex-bourbon barrels, and it's also aged in STR red wine casks. Now, STR stands for shaved, toasted and recharred. So what they do is they get the barrels, they shave them back to the new wood. So they shave all the charring off it, then they retoast it and re-char it again. That gets rid of some of the heavier influences of the red wine. It gets you back to the virgin oak, so you get some of that spiciness from the oak, and it helps with the flavour profile. And that's what Dr. Jim Swan's favourite barrel type was. So that's why it's dedicated to him. And yeah, so founder's choice. That's what it's aged in. Now, it's bottled at 60.5% ABV, so that's over 120 proof, so it's quite high. It's a 3-year-old whiskey, or as you'll see when I nose and taste this now, you would never know that this was a 3-year-old whiskey. It's non-chill filtered, and that's the natural colour. So it has a lovely deep golden brown colour, and for a 3-year-old whiskey, I'm assuming that it gets that lovely colour from the red wine casks. That's just an assumption on my part. So on the nose, now, this has a really, really nice nose, and it's amazing to me. This is 60% proof, and I can bury my nose in this glass, and you would have no idea that this is 60 ABV. It has a lovely sweetness to it, so there's toffee in there. You get a lovely woody note. I always find that from Cask whiskies. The barrel note stays. It's a lovely woody type note, so toffee, wood. There's a dry note in there. When I first nosed it, I kind of got some stewed apples. There's berries and fruits, mostly red berries and figs. A very, very nice nose. And for a 3-year-old whiskey, it has a lovely deep kind of aroma to it. Now, also the first thing I noticed about this is if you told me this was an Irish whiskey, if you said this was an Irish single malt, I would agree. If I didn't know what was in this glass and you said have a nose of that, I would say it has a very Irish single malt character to it. So it has that nice little hint of sweetness, not too sweet, and then it has a really fruity, deep character, which is kind of what you get with the Irish style, so very, very nice. So yeah, I would say on the nose, it's a lovely toffee note. You get some lovely woody barrel note, then you get some fruit, some stewed apple maybe, and then some red berries and figs. So very, very nice. So on the palate, again, it doesn't have that big kick of ethanol that you're expecting from a 60% ABV. It's certainly there. It is certainly present, but it's a big hit of sweetness up front. It's a kind of a lovely toffee. Then on the mid palate, it's all those berries. So it's like a raspberry. Like I said, there is a tartness there, and it finishes with a dryness. So think red berries, think maybe a hint of strawberry, some figs, think of some raspberries, and then think of like a dry apple. That's what I'm getting from it. And then it finishes with a little bit of heat. But for 60%, you would never know. You would think this is somewhere in the high 40s, early 50s. And it's very well balanced. And you would never know this is a 3-year-old whiskey. I have to say, it is very nice. I'm very well impressed with it. So let's do what we always do. Let's let this sit on its side for about 10 minutes. We let it open up, let it do its thing. We'll see if we can get anything more out of it. Okay, so we've let it sit on its side as we always do for 10 minutes. Just let it open up, see if we can just pull anything else out of it. So on the nose. Now I'm amazed at the kind of deep golden colour that this has. And they say on the bottle it's natural colour and non-chill filtered. So yeah, it's amazing that a 3-year-old whiskey can get that kind of colour. So like I said already, I'm assuming it comes from the wine casks. So on the nose. On the nose now, there's definitely a kind of a malty character I'm getting up front. Then that woody note, toffee and some lovely fruits. So yeah, it's definitely brought, leaving it sit for a while, it's definitely brought that kind of malty, kind of funky, kind of malty character to the forefront. But all the lovely, just that hint of sweetness and all those fruits are still there. So still, like I'd say, it's just, if you told me this was an Irish single malt, I would believe you. Right up my street, I have to say, very, very nice. So nose, malty, woody, toffee and fruits. That's what I get. So on the palate. On the palate again, I'm amazed when it's 60% and it's so well balanced. There's no big heat, there's no big burn. You can feel it, it's present. You will definitely know that it's a higher ABV whiskey. But it has none of that real heartburn you get from green whiskies. It's amazing that it's 60% ABV. And it's that big hit of sweetness I find from the higher ABV whiskies you get up front. It must be something that the alcohol is just driving that flavour into the palate. But it's a big hit of toffee up front, a little bit more malty now. They're kind of a woody note. Everything on the nose is what you get on the palate. And you get that kind of tartness there. So I'm getting a bit more apple now and a bit more of the raspberry. And then it has a real kind of dry finish, which is quite nice. And it just kind of lingers then with a kind of a sweetness and some of those tart kind of fruits. So all in all, very, very nice. I highly, highly recommend this one, guys. Okay guys, so there we go. That has been my opinion on Cotswolds Single Malt Founders Reserve Cask Strength Whisky. And I have to say, very, very nice. Very, very surprised. Like I said already, England is not known for its whiskies, but if they keep producing stuff like this over there, they will certainly be known soon for their whiskey, and that is very, very nice. And the fact that it's only 3 years old is fantastic indeed. So I can't wait to see what else the Cotswolds put out. So definitely check it out if you can, guys. Now the sad thing is, it's not easy to get yourself a bottle of this. I've looked online, I've seen other people struggle to get this as well. The 2019 release sold out immediately. I think that was 1,800 bottles. This is probably the 2020 release. This is 2,500 bottles. And like I say, when they released them, they nearly sold out. So the only place I could find was to buy this directly from the distillery itself, but they don't ship to the EU currently, and I suppose that's to do with Brexit. So until that gets sorted out, you're in hard luck there. I don't know if this is available in the States, guys, but definitely look it up, check it out. If somewhere near you has a bottle of this, I highly recommend it. Try what English whiskey is like. This one is very, very good. And like I said, if you like your Irish single malts, you will definitely like this. And it has a bit of a punch to it as well, the fact that it's cask strength. So once again, thanks very much, Matthew. Yeah, a great gift indeed, and you are dead right. This one is a very nice whiskey indeed, and for a 3-year-old, you will be very, very surprised. So there we go, guys. That's been my review of the Cotswolds Single Malt Founders Choice Cask Strength Whiskey. So there we go. Slime off, Macara. I shall see you in the next one. So take it easy. Oh, it's just a lovely hit of sweetness and fruitiness. Toffee, delicious.